My recent video on the Tiger was pretty well received, despite the topic being a bit controversial. That was honestly pretty surprising to see, but I'm happy it's a format you guys enjoy. So naturally, the Panther was a pretty obvious pick for the next episode. The Panther and Tiger are similar in a lot of ways, though I think the Panther's story is more interesting overall. Much like the Tiger, most positions held on the Panther are very much polarized. Some say it was amazing in that it was the first main battle tank. Others say that it was terrible and that Germany should have made more Panzer IVs. As is usually the case, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So let's take a look at the Panther's history. It all started in 1938, when the German army began looking at replacing their Panzer IVs. These started as very rough concepts under the VK-20 program, which was to develop a medium tank in the 20-ton range. These were developed by Krupp, Daimler-Benz, and MAN. The general hull shape remained similar to the Panzer IV, though MAN designed a torsion bar suspension system, whereas the other designs made use of the typical leaf spring. One of MAN's later designs, the VK-2002M, used a new angled front to the Panzer IV-like stepped front. The designs all had the same armor thickness, having 50mm fronts and 40mm sides. In December of 1941, the VK-20 program was cancelled in favor of a new program, VK-30, which was to develop a mini tank in the 30-ton weight class. The program was initiated in light of Operation Barbarossa, where Soviet tanks like the T-34 and KV-1 were putting up stiff resistance. It was clear the next medium tank would need two main things: a very powerful gun and thick armor. Naturally, the latter also meant the new tank would need beefier automotive components as well. Only two companies were awarded contracts this time, Daimler-Benz and MAN, with models being shown to the Mustache Man in January of 1942. The design by Daimler-Benz, the VK-3001, was incredibly similar to the T-34. It had a rear-mounted transmission, and also had a leaf spring suspension system. The MAN design was quite different. It mostly drew from their earlier VK-2002 design. Called VK-3002, the transmission was mounted in the front, and it had a torsion bar suspension system. Both designs had 60mm of armor. Automotive performance was also similar, though the MAN design had better range. Eventually the MAN design was chosen. The reasons were pretty simple. It was more developed, had more space in the turret, had more range, the suspension was more stable, and it was easier to ford rivers. In May of 1942, MAN was informed they won the competition. They were also informed that at the behest of the Mustache Man, the upper front plate's thickness would be increased by 20mm, making it 80mm in total. With this, the weight ballooned nearly 45 tons. It was to be powered by the HL-230 engine, rated at 700 horsepower. In fall of that same year, two pilot vehicles were delivered, but orders for production were placed even before that. In January of 1943, the first production Panthers were received, though a large number of faults were uncovered through testing. These issues included failures in the fuel system, engine fires, transmission breakdowns, and inadequate ventilation. These issues were largely ignored, as it was believed the Panthers would be needed for Operation Citadel. The Panthers used in this operation went through multiple rebuild programs, but its initial deployment was still disastrous. The vast majority of the roughly 200 Panthers were lost to mechanical breakdowns, with only 10 Panthers still being functional after a few days. The first Panthers were lost to engine fires, which happened while they were being unloaded from trains. A severe lack of training also played a large part. Because of the multiple rebuild programs, crews had no tanks to train on beforehand. The most troubled components were the final drives and engines. It's important to remember the Panther was 10 tons overweight. This had a severe impact on the suspension as well as the final drives. Eventually the suspension was fixed, but the final drives never truly were. They were only improved. In French service, final drives only last 150 kilometers on average. It's possible this was less of an issue for late war Germany, who now had to cover less distance, and was also now using railways to ferry Panthers even short distances. The HL-230 engine was plagued with issues, most notably fuel leaks and carburetor backfires. These issues would often compound each other and result in engine fires. Sometimes the vehicle would survive with no damage, other times it was a total loss. The engine was modified and derated to curb this behavior, though the success of this was limited. In a post-war British test, brand new Panthers still encountered engine fires. So a quick recap. Almost all the Panther's automotive components were troubled initially. The suspension and transmission were both quickly fixed, though issues with the final drives and engines continued to linger, albeit not to the same degree as they once did. Thanks to component improvements, better training, more spare parts, movement by train, and Germany's now defensive position, the Panther's reliability increased. At the end of the war, the Panther was about as reliable and easy to produce as a Panzer IV, though late Panzer IVs weren't exactly reliable themselves. To summarize, yes, the Panther was very troubled, but towards the end of the war, it wasn't nearly as bad as people like to claim. It was effective in its role, and it was probably the best Germany could do, but its combat effectiveness is overstated. Probably not to the same degree as the Tigers though. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.